MS-13 members in the U.S. and in El Salvador. In this country, 198 of the alleged gang members were foreigners. 193 of them were here illegally. 193 out of 198. 64 of those illegal immigrants arrived in the U.S. as unaccompanied minors, which current American law blocks the expedited removal of, even when they are caught at the border. Those recent arrests ought to be proof enough that illegal immigrant crime is a real issue in this country. Ask anyone who lives in an immigrant community and suffers from it. But the federal government is still having a pretty hard time getting local law enforcement to help them fight it. Yesterday, the Department of Justice sent letters to 29 cities, counties, and states warning them they need to do more to cooperate with federal immigration enforcement or lose access to federal grants. Kathy Sheen is the mayor of Albany, New York, the state capital. It's one of 29 jurisdictions targeted. She joins us tonight. Mayor, thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
So if the overwhelming, almost every single MS-13 member, almost, caught in this country is here illegally, and this is, I think everyone would agree, one of the most dangerous gangs in the country, one of the biggest threats to immigrant communities in the country, isn't this all the proof we need that our immigration policy has a direct effect on crime?
Well, I think that it's great when you have federal law enforcement step in and assist localities in ensuring that federal immigration laws are enforced. And so when you look at that as an example, you know, that's an example of where there was cooperation, and public safety is paramount to every mayor across this city. And that's what we're looking for in our municipalities.
But a sanctuary city, by definition, offers sanctuary to people who are here illegally, making it, of course, much more likely you'll have a lot of people living there who are not allowed to be here. And why doesn't that help groups like MS-13?
Well, yeah, you know, I think it's because that term sanctuary city means so many different things to different people. I tell people all the time, this doesn't mean that we're hiding undocumented immigrants in the basement of City Hall. And, you know, it's interesting that when John Kelly was heading Homeland Security and was asked by a police chief in San Diego what the definition of sanctuary city was, I think his response was, you know, who the hell knows? But, you know, what it means in the city of Albany is that we're going to do our job, and we're going to expect the federal government to do their job.
Do you have the same policy for bank robbery and kidnapping?
You know, we are not called upon to enforce federal immigration law. And I'll give you an example. You know, first of all, as a mayor,
do you have the same policy for other federal crimes? You would have no problem, I assume, assisting the feds in apprehending a bank robber. Why is this different?
But simply being in this country without documentation is not a crime. The U.S. Supreme Court has said that. And so what we have to look at, and what we look at in our policy, is how do we keep our city safe? And I have a police chief who I believe is doing an outstanding job in community engagement and in policing in this city. And one of the challenges that we have is that there is an underreporting of crime by immigrants who are here, documented or undocumented. We have a very large refugee resettlement community.
Can you just back up for 1 second? You just said that being here illegally is not illegal? How does that, I'm not aware of that Supreme Court decision. How is that true?
In Arizona versus the United States, the Supreme Court said that simply being here undocumented is not a crime. There are civil violations, and then there are criminal violations. But
it's not a crime. So then why would, so in other words, the U.S. government has no right to deport people or to put them in custody? But if it's not a crime, then why are they doing that?
Because it can be a civil violation, and they absolutely have a right, and that's what they should be doing. And so this is really about, first of all, keeping a city safe. Secondly, upholding the Constitution, which I swore to uphold when I was sworn in as mayor.
I mean, look, I'm trying to be respectful, but you know that you're not telling the truth. I mean, look, if someone is here illegally and working, he's using forged federal documents. And that is a crime, okay? And because the Congress passed a series of laws after 9/11, because all 19 hijackers had fake documents, that made that a pretty serious crime. So you've got a city, your city's 40% foreign-born, probably a ton of people there illegally, and they're using forged federal documents, and you're not doing anything about it. You don't think that's a threat to the safety of people in other parts of the country?
That's not local municipalities. That's not local law enforcement's job to enforce. And so we have a thing called the 10th Amendment. And the 10th Amendment says that, you know, in what's in the Constitution, that is the power of the federal government is the power of the federal government,
but
and
then,
everything
so why
else
not
falls
apply
to the
that
states.
to other? No, because
So
the truth is, this is political,
wait,
and that's why it's hard to take a lecture from you about the Constitution when you know perfectly well that this is political pressure coming to bear on you and other mayors that is making you ignore federal law on this subject, but not on others, right? I mean, let's be honest.
But this is why the provision in the Brady handgun law that required local municipalities to do background checks was found to be unconstitutional, because the federal government cannot force municipalities, states, or local governments to do things that they are not within their power. We are not Uber Ice here. We're here.
So let me ask you a specific question. If the feds said, look, we're trying to find someone we believe is a criminal alien, and you have him in custody, will you hold him another day until we get there? I believe under your policies, the answer would be no.
Well, we have always cooperated, and our policy is to cooperate. We follow Section 1373, that there's been a lot of talk about. We work with federal and state officials in law enforcement actions all the time. And so what we are talking about when we talk about sanctuary is that it's not our police officer's job to ask a person what their legal status is.
But if the feds asked you to hold someone, would you?
We're not going to ask them to tell us whether or not, or to show us their papers.
Okay, but no. But actually, that's not what they're asking. They're saying, look, if we know, for example, you would say no.
Well, we have to have a legitimate reason. Again,
that's not a legitimate reason. Right? He's breaking federal immigration law passed by the Congress.
The Fourth Amendment of the Constitution says that you have to have probable cause. If the federal government provides probable cause, then absolutely we will hold somebody.
The probable cause is we know for a fact he's here in the country illegally, violating federal immigration law. Will you hold him on those grounds? Because we think he's an MS-13. Would you do that?
And if a warrant is issued, we can hold people. But we have to follow the Constitution. And that's all that we're simply doing. And you know, the final thing, too, is this.
Hit me really quick. We're almost out of time.
Okay, we are a city that has a growing immigrant population.
I'm aware.
And it is good for our economy. And it is, when we look at northeastern cities and an aging population, if we want to continue to have a vibrant economy, we have to be welcoming to everybody.
As an economic matter, do you know what? If I can just say, there's no evidence to support that, actually. Because this is something that, I probably know as much about as you, and I don't actually think that there is evidence that that's all economic upside. But we're going to have to agree to disagree, I guess. But that's